Okay, we're talking with John Lewis Perner, former Lebanon resident and former Mole, member of the Moles. He was the keyboardist for the Moles. Now, John, do you prefer I call you John or Lewis?
Well, you can call me either one. John Lewis is my name, but people knew me as Lewis in high school, and I kept it for a long time till after the Moles, or into the late 70s. When I changed, I became John, because my dad's name was Lewis.
Oh, okay. And you lived here in Lebanon. You were born here in Lebanon, weren't you?
Right.
Now, when did the Moles start? How did you meet them and the members, and what started all that?
Well, I met a friend named Robert Talent who had a band in Mount Jewett called the Visions, and he actually married my younger sister Barbara. But I was in high school playing trombone, and Robert had this little band playing down in Mount Jewett at a place called Teen Town, and he asked me if I wanted to play. So I got a saxophone and thought I could learn to play it. I learned a song called Long Tall Texan and went down there and auditioned with him on the saxophone. And it didn't work out so good. But then I met up with a couple of guys who I carried papers with a few years earlier, Billy James and Mike Lane. And Billy James really was a go-getter, and he had talent. And so I hooked up with them. I was thinking, man, these guys, this is the thing, because I wanted to get out there, and play the guitar. And I changed to guitar, and that's how it started. We started playing at some dances after we learned some tunes, like at McLean School at the gym. And we played over at Gallatin at the Armory, because there was another band that were doing that circuit called the Deltas, which turned into the Glass Hammer.
Yeah, I remember them. About what year was this?
This was a '65. I graduated from Cumberland with an associate in arts degree in '65, and then got involved in this music and never went on with my education. It was so exciting.
Well, that was about the time the Beatles were really hot and everything.
That's
and
right.
You were now with the Moles, and you guys started traveling, didn't you?
Right. We went down to Daytona Beach just for fun, and that's where we met the Allman Joys, they were called, personally. Now, let me backtrack a second. We first saw them, I guess, in about '66 at the Municipal Auditorium, because we were in a band that was in a contest called the Battle of the Bands, and we won this thing. But these Allman Joys were there apparently doing a record. I think it was a song John D. Loudermilk wrote, and I think it was called Spoonful, or was it Tobacco Road? Spoonful. But we heard them play there. They did kind of an introduction one night before the contest, where it was several nights. But I knew right away that they had talent, because they were just something different than the Nashville bands. Even Duane Allman's guitar playing, he was really good at phrasing. And of course they had a good bass player and a good drummer, and they were special right off. I could tell it.
So was Greg playing keyboard at that time?
No, he was playing guitar.
Yeah.
They were playing Gibson 335 guitars, both of them.
And they were a four-piece band?
Right. Then, back to Daytona Beach. We met them again in Daytona, and we had some songs learned by that time. We were playing things like Spooky and Wild Thing and some of that English rock. And we met up with them because that's where they were living at the time. I really didn't realize that they had gone to Heights, or born in Nashville at the time.
You're talking about Castle Heights Military Academy here in Lebanon.
Right.
Yeah, they had gone to school there when they were younger.
Right. Well, then we met up with them because the place we stayed, we got a little apartment in Daytona and got a little job at a little club there at the Martinique. And they would come in there. And so that's where I met them. We lived right across the street. Greg was, he was kind of standoffish, tall, skinny guy with long blonde hair. course, I met up with his brother because I was over there watching him learn some songs, some Yardbird songs, you know, and he was talking to me, and so we sort of became friends. We saw them a lot around. They played at the pier, and we saw them quite a bit. And then when we left this Daytona gig, we came back to Nashville. Well, they got on a circuit that we were on and booked some of the same places. The next time I met them was in Nashville because they were booked by a group called One Nighters, which was Billy Smith, and he used to play in the Casuals. And so they booked the Casuals and a show band called the Tikis, and they booked us, and they booked the Allmans. They were called the Allman Joys in those days. Well, they came back. We played the Briar Patch on 5th Avenue South. They played it. And one night we both alternated sets, you know, with them.
Yeah.
Because the bartender girl asked me once, she said, Duane asked her if she thought that they were better than them.
So Duane asked the bartender girl whether or not the Moles were better than the Allman Joys.
Yeah, because they didn't know. We were.
Yeah, they were kind of scared of you, weren't they?
But Greg came in there. He had a Vox Continental organ. That's this time.
Yeah.
He'd switched over, and they were doing Yardbird songs, Beatles. They could really do them really well.
Yeah.
We weren't doing quite the same music, but we were influenced by them.
Yeah.
And then I went out and got somewhere out there, 8th Avenue South. I forget the name of that organ company, but I got a Vox Continental. I had to have one too, because he had one.
Because Greg had one.
Right. So I got the thing. I had a super reverb amplifier at that time, and it didn't work very well with the organ.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Duane, and he had this Fender Showman, Fender Dual Showman, 100-watt amp, solid back, two JBLs in it. And I said, he wasn't too happy with it. I told him, I've got a motorcycle. I'll trade you for that amplifier, because somehow we got on motorcycles. He said he had a Honda 305 or something, whatever it was in those days.
Yeah.
I don't know how it came about that we did that, but I said, okay. I said, I need an amplifier, and I don't have much money, but I have a motorcycle. If you like motorcycles, I'd like to pass this motorcycle on. It was a Triumph Thunderbird 650 twin. I got it from a guy named Roy Raines, who worked for the city for a while there. It had caught on fire and burned up. Not burned up, burned the wiring up. But my dad helped me rewire it. And we got it running pretty good. So Duane was over there, came over and took a look at it one day, and I said, okay.
Came over to your house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we had talked about it. I said, I'm going to be traveling a little bit with this band. I don't need this motorcycle. But so we made this trade. And he said, well, I need an amp. He said, I'll buy that super reverb from you. So he did. I had sold it to him. And then he got on the motorcycle, and I followed him back to Nashville. I remember I had a Rambler American then, because right before I started this music thing, I was working at a loan company in Nashville as a loan officer, and I needed an economical car. Boy, and I tell you, it was hard to keep up with that guy going back up there. I had to go back up there. They were staying at the Anchor Motel up on Broadway during their little stay at the club there. So I followed him back and loaned him my suede jacket where he wouldn't be cold. And I was thinking, man, this guy's pretty wild on this motorcycle. I said, I hope he don't get into trouble. But I went up there and took the Showman and gave him my super reverb. And then I guess the next I heard from them was they were playing in Paducah, Kentucky, the Bunny Club they called it. And I heard that Duane blew the motorcycle up there, hot rodding it. So, and you know the story. I'm glad if I had to do it over again, I think I would have kept the motorcycle as a collector's item.
Yeah, yeah.
But
about what year was that?
That was about 66, 67. All this happened really fast.
Yeah, yeah. And you were living on, at that time in Lebanon, your mom and dad's house was on North Greenwood?
North Hatton.
North Hatton, yeah, yeah. and you picked Duane up at the motel and brought him to your house so he could look at the motorcycle and so he could drive it back and then make the trade, right?
Right.
Well, after that, did you run into him anymore? Did you ever see him anymore?
Oh yeah, we saw him I guess a year or so later, back at I guess about a year later, at the same club. The Briar Patch it was called.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it was called the Reading Room.
Yeah.
A lot of the local bands played there. Sam Pugh and his band, he used to work at Hughley's as a salesman and was a bass player. Well, anyway, when they came back, I think we had been to a couple of places around, and we still played the local clubs, you know, and we had a different drummer in the beginning. No, I take it back. That was before we met the Allmans, when we had Steve Quarles. Quarles, we had a little controversy. Steve and his parents didn't want us to play at the Rainbow Club, the local club. Didn't want to get into that, but we changed drummers, and we decided we had to do it, or we weren't going to be able to do this booking, because they wanted to book us clubs. Okay, when we saw the Allman Brothers again a year later, they had totally changed. They had grown their hair. They started growing their hair out, and they changed guitars. They were playing Telecasters with little Vox distortion things. That Duane was a clever guy. He figured out how to mount it on his guitar where he could switch it.
He'd switch it off his guitar.
Switch it off his guitar, that little distortion thing plugged right into the guitar. He was a clever guy.
Yeah.
They were playing Yardbirds and blues, started playing blues.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and they started looking pretty rough, you know, looking. But that's all they wanted to play then is blues. And we was thinking, man, what's wrong with these guys? You know, we were playing what we always played, which was pop, I guess. And
yeah, dance music.
But they started changing into the blues at the time. But of course, they were good. Duane was getting it together with he was still playing the Vox organ, but he had a Hammond Leslie now on his Vox, where he could do that Doppler effect, you know, with that rotating speaker.
Yeah.
And so that's when it began for them. Another couple of years later, they had got with those Muscle Shoals boys, or got with some people that were, I guess, got Dickie Betts in there.
Yeah.
And then that's when it started coming together, because Dickie Betts could play that pentatonic scale. I wouldn't call it country music, and Duane could play that slide.
Yeah.
And between them both, that's how it started for them. Another year or so later, that's when they had their album, Whipping Post, I guess it was called. Wasn't that the first one? Or the Allman Brothers?
Yeah, the Allman Brothers was the first album, and I think Whipping Post was on that first album, yeah.
Yeah, they changed the name from the Allman Joys to the Allman Brothers.
Yeah.